He's the big white whale that most people don't even know is lurking under the surface. He's influenced more business gurus than you could probably imagine. In fact, Tony Robbins, it's one of his top 5 books of all time. He's influenced Dan Locke.
Have you read the book?
Tai Lopez.
Have you read this book?
Bob Proctor.
You see, this is the first book I ever read. Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. I had never read a book before that.
Chances are, if you have a business guy you follow, he's read Napoleon Hill and he thinks he's the absolute Just listen to this YouTuber summarize sort of the popularized story of Napoleon Hill.
What's going on, guys? As many of you know, one of my favorite books in personal development is Think and Grow Rich. That book was catalyzed as a result of Napoleon Hill, the author, meeting Andrew Carnegie, who was the wealthiest man in the world at the time. Carnegie basically charged Napoleon Hill with interviewing a number of successful people, almost 200 people, and extracting the principles that allowed them to do their life's work.
All right, that's pretty amazing, actually. You have this guy who was broke at the time, Napoleon Hill, a journalist, apparently, who got allowed into the inner chambers of Andrew Carnegie for a long 3-hour interview, and he ends up basically committing Napoleon Hill with his most important work, passing down his knowledge. Napoleon Hill repeats the same story.
When I first heard Andrew Carnegie describe this natural law, which makes it possible for you and I and everyone else to write his own price tag in life and attain it, my search led me to the study of the spiritual forces with which all of us are blessed. And it was in this field that I came upon it and attained it while I was being coached by Andrew Carnegie during the organization of the Science of Success philosophy. I had just finished telling Mr. Carnegie that I feared he had chosen the wrong person to give the world the first practical philosophy of personal success because of my youth, my lack of education, and my lack of finances.
An incredible American story of somebody from a high billionaire business class reaching down and lifting someone up who is an unknown writer to pass on his greatest wisdom. Except it probably never happened. Okay, so why do I say that? How could I claim that this man whose entire life's work is built off of this incredible chance meeting with Andrew Carnegie and passing down all his information, how could I claim that he did not meet him? Well, for starters, they apparently met early in the 1900s, but he didn't start telling the story until after Andrew Carnegie died. He didn't share the story that they had met together. And the proof of Andrew Carnegie actually meeting with him, well, apparently he had all their letters together, but according to his own biographers, they got lost in a fire. Unfortunately, all the letters, they burned away. Now, at this point, I'm getting a little bit of Evan Luthor vibes. If you guys don't know, that's someone I interviewed before who claimed he was mentored by Steve Jobs. First, was he your mentor or not? Let's just answer that question with a yes or no.
I think I would like to say yes.
Later, when I pressured him on this, he admitted that actually he had never talked to Steve Jobs at all, and instead he mentored in the sense of he had been inspired by Steve Jobs. I have a little trouble believing that because on our call, I think yesterday, you said you were not mentored by Steve Jobs and that you never said that.
I never said Steve Jobs was a mentor, by the way.
You don't have to talk to somebody all the time to consider them your mentor. I would like to believe that the internet has been my biggest mentor.
That's kind of like Napoleon Hill, it seems, because there's absolutely no evidence that he ever met with Andrew Carnegie. Even if you believe that it was lost in a fire, we can compare Napoleon Hill's writings about Andrew Carnegie with Andrew Carnegie's own writing. In fact, Andrew Carnegie's own biographer doubts that they ever met at all. He says, let me put it this way, I found no evidence that the book was authentic. So this man built an entire career on this alleged meeting of the minds with Andrew Carnegie and all these wealthy people, but there's no proof of it, and Andrew Carnegie's own biographer says, yeah, it didn't happen. But guys, we can reach deeper than that. We don't have to simply rely on this guy's opinion. Who is he? Just the biographer of Andrew Carnegie. So we have 2 books we're going to look at. One is Napoleon Hill's account of his conversation with Andrew Carnegie. And 2, we're going to actually look at Andrew Carnegie's biography, and we're going to look at one of his little mini books called The Gospel of Wealth. See, Andrew Carnegie actually wrote a lot, despite what these ideas say that Andrew Carnegie needed a reporter to transcribe all his ideas down. For a guy who was going to let someone else do the talking, he sure wrote a lot. So let's compare these two. In Napoleon Hill's account of Andrew Carnegie, Carnegie comes across like he's really doesn't really feel bad for people who are poor, because really there's no injustice. Because just like the law of attraction states, which of course I think you guys should know by now is what Napoleon Hill came up with in Think and Grow Rich. If you guys don't know, that's what The Secret was based off of. That's where all this stuff is inspired by. But he says here, understand this truth and you will know that there's no injustice in connection with the difference between the fortunes which men accumulate. In other words, whether you're Andrew Carnegie or you're the guy working at McDonald's, you deserve what you get. They are where they are, and they are drawing the wages they receive solely because of the limitations they have set up in their own minds. In other words, look, everybody could be rich. Literally everybody. There's no problem with that. You just have to think about it. It's your mindset. Your mindset's bad. Have you heard of that? But according to Andrew Carnegie, who sounds much more like a businessman than a self-help guru in his own book, Gospel of Wealth, he says that competition naturally creates inequality. Under the law of competition, the employer of thousands is forced into the strictest economies, among which the rates paid to laborers figure prominently, and often there's friction between the employer and the employed, between capital and labor, between rich and poor. Sounds a little bit different, right? And wait a minute, that completely conflicts what Napoleon Hill says over here. I never set the wage scale of any man who works for me. That's supposedly Andrew Carnegie right there talking. Right there, you see that? But Andrew Carnegie, in his own book, laments the fact that he's forced to pay the strictest economies, basically the lowest possible rate for the most amount of work, which is how capitalism works. You want to pay as little as possible for the best amount of work, and then competition is formed for who you can hire based on that. Additionally, it is categorically false that Andrew Carnegie ever thought that everybody could just be rich by thinking that way. He thought instead, like a business person would think, that people who excelled at things of scale would inevitably make more money than people who didn't. In other words, if you can own the cloth factory, you can make more money than the person who sells the cloth or creates the cloth one by one. There must be great scope for the exercise of special ability in the merchant and in the manufacturer who has to conduct fairs on a great scale. That this talent for organization and management is rare among men is proved by the fact that it invariably secures enormous rewards for its possessors. In other words, either Andrew Carnegie completely changed his beliefs by the time he talked to Napoleon Hill and between when he wrote this book, or somebody's lying here. So what else do we know about Napoleon Hill that could push us one way or the other? Does he have a pattern of lying, or is he telling the truth? Well, I'll let you decide from some of his incredible stories. According to him, President Wilson, even though he was broke, decided he wanted to put old Napoleon Hill on the government payroll at a rather attractive salary. Now, how did he meet President Wilson? Well, apparently, of course, Andrew Carnegie really wanted them to meet. So they go ahead and they meet, but for once in my life, I had the privilege of vetoing the President of the United States. Now, he instead, though broke, made it essential he goes the extra mile without no thought of what he might receive for his services. In other words, he didn't charge the President of the United States a penny to work for him. This is all despite the fact that Napoleon Hill's life up to this point has been solely for the purpose of accumulating riches. But when it comes to the president, he doesn't want to impose. Other features of this incredible man's life is that apparently later on, after Woodrow Wilson had moved out of the White House, he got to know another president, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Apparently, although his record of a real relationship proof is surprisingly scant, according to his biographers, but in conversations and in some of his papers, Hill sometimes claimed to have coined the historic remark, "We have nothing to fear but fear itself," and claimed to have written a number of Roosevelt's fireside chats. That's right, guys. While not meeting with the billionaire business magnate Andrew Carnegie, he was busy consoling America and making sure that everyone felt okay by drafting the fireside chats. According to Napoleon Hill, he supplied the president with a steady stream of suggestions for topics, and fully aware of his own powers of persuasion, Hill was never bashful about supplying a script that would help the president make his point.
This story is extraordinary.
Oh, the original original fake guru. Guys, this man is claiming to have mentored 2 presidents. I mean, at this point, he's mentoring them. And he personally got self-selected by Andrew Carnegie to be plucked from poverty and to be suddenly made the #1 writer. What a lucky guy, I've got to say. As Wilson's suddenly deciding whether he should have an armistice for Germany, and Napoleon Hill's in the room. And the first person he read the decoded message to was, of course, Napoleon Hill. Woodrow Wilson's face turned white as snow. When he finished reading, he handed the document to Napoleon Hill. That's right. Top secret decoded information. Who do you give it to? Napoleon Hill. You leave it with that person. Apparently, the president was gone for 15 minutes. When he returned, he handed me a couple of sheets of paper on which he had written his reply to the Germans, which ended with 3 questions related to the terms of the armistice. After I read his reply, he asked if Napoleon Hill had any suggestions to add to it. Hey, Napoleon, would you like to help end World War I? Huh? Now, if all of this is starting to sound increasingly improbable, and it seems like the whole thing is made up, just wait. The story is just beginning. Because Napoleon Hill also faked being an attorney at law. I don't know if you guys can see that. He wrote that he's Napoleon Hill, attorney at law, Michigan Avenue. His own biographers, who at this point have found it credulous and included as fact that he has been an advisor to Woodrow Wilson and FDR, they call this a highly exaggerated claim, aka a lie. It's a lie. But all of this pales in comparison to the fake college that this man set up. That's right. Napoleon Hill not only started the fake testimonials, the fake mentorships, just lying about who you met, lying about their advice. He also coined something else. The original course, guys. This is, I'm serious. You guys know Think and Grow Rich, but you guys don't know the Automobile College of Washington, where he supposedly trained chauffeurs and car owners to drive and prepare mechanics, told assembly line jobs in automobile plants. That's how his biographers talk about it. Now, and this is well borne out in the actual newspaper clippings that this man was the president of the Automobile College of Washington. But what his biographers coincidentally don't mention is this. This is an old school CoffeeZilla. Back before CoffeeZilla existed. This is the original thing. Some guy wrote pointing the easy route to get rich quickland, which was an expose on Napoleon Hill. I'm not even lying. This man, during his life, was exposed for running a fake course. He got Zilla'd. Look at this, okay? I'll only read you the most important parts, okay? So they make fun of the fact that they call this the greatest school of expert automobile engineering in the United States. Does that not sound like a Caleb Maddox line? The greatest opportunity of our era? Literally nothing has changed.
And I really believe that the YT method is the greatest opportunity of our era.
Additionally, this thing says, the catalog ought to be worth its weight in gold to the dyspeptic, for there's a good laugh on every page. Which is, old town speak for this guy is a clown. And they're talking about the Automobile College of Washington. Apparently, the whole scheme was a big plan to get free labor from college students. So you would pay in and they would get free labor. How it worked is you'd go into the school and while training you, you worked for them. You paid to be trained while you worked for them. And they had partnered with like an automobile manufacturer. And supposedly at the end, you were supposed to get this sales job where you could make, thousands of dollars. At the time, none of that was true. See, Napoleon Hill was also the first person to make big income claims. Our course prepares you to earn $4,800 a year or more. Briefly, the plan is all that those who attend and become a student of this college will get a job in this college. Become sales agents, guys. You can be a high-ticket closer for Napoleon Hill. See, he was the first one to do it right. And why am I showing you all of this? Why are we going through so much detail? Well, guys, you might have been mystified before when somebody who has as good of a reputation as Napoleon Hill could produce such sleazebags as people like, your Locks of the world, your Tai Lopez's of the world. How does that square away? But when you actually look at Napoleon Hill's life, and then you look at the life of people who are inspired by him, you go, oh yeah, they're the same person. This guy used the tactics that modern day fake business gurus are using before it was ever a thing, and then he wrote their Bible. Are we really surprised? But wait, guys, there's more. There's also a multi-level marketing side to this whole scheme. And by the way, remember, this is a paper from back in the day. This is all historical, okay? So I'm not making any of this stuff up. It's all factually either in Napoleon Hill's biography, newspaper clippings, Andrew Carnegie's biography. So don't get mad at me. This is not me saying it. It's like the fault of everyone who's read Napoleon Hill up to this point and never bothered to look any further, simply Think and Grow Rich. Now, not only does Napoleon Hill do all of that, he also made it an MLM, this college. He says the very day you enroll, you may begin to send this to the names of young men who you think might be interested in our course. And you got commissions for it. Guys, I can't stand this. This man is a con man. And he says, oh, you're going to pay for your course several times over in this manner. Now, this author, of course, points out that if everyone did this, then, of course, the entire District of Columbia would soon be required for the campus. Obviously, this stuff grows exponentially. So these people, back in the day, back in the 1900s, realized this guy was a con man. But through the power of just kind of whitewashing history, little by little, people forget that these things exist. This man has managed to make a reputation for himself of being some genius in business. In reality, even by his biographer's account, who are super generous with him, who believe all his stupid claims, he was constantly broke, constantly in debt, even went to jail. Oh yeah, I forgot about that. Did I tell you that he went to jail for a stock scheme, which is why he got arrested for blue sky stuff, which is an Illinois law about unlicensed securities, He was arrested and released. And do you know what his excuse was? Hill claimed that he was simply a forceful writer. Guys, let me stop for a second and just ask you, have you heard that before? Have you ever heard a marketer, who I'm calling a fake guru, go, hey, I just like to aggressively market? You know, so what? I say you're going to make $1 million. It's just aggressive marketing. This is where it all comes from. This is why, again, he's at the center of the board. This man is the con man of all con men, and nobody knows it. Actually, there's one great article about this, paleofuture.gizmodo.com. Incredible article. I'll link it below. A lot of the stuff you're seeing here is from that, although I went and hunted down the sources myself just to make sure they were legit. But this is why he's at the very center. Because despite maintaining an attitude and a reputation of perfection, the truth about Napoleon Hill is that he lied about who he was talking to. He lied about who he was being mentored by. He invented wild claims. He invented the first MLM. I don't know if that's the first MLM, but it's one of the first MLMs ever. He invented a course. Like every move that you see of the modern guru, it's all taken from Napoleon Hill. He's the king. He's on top. And he's on top for a reason, because damn, he was ahead of his time. I mean, let me be very real with you. And the truth about him is just really not known. People think he's some savant, some genius who talked to the great minds of America. But the truth is, they never knew him. They never heard of this guy, which can be proven by the fact if you read Andrew Carnegie, who's written his own books, he didn't need someone to write them for him, they're so wildly different than Napoleon Hill. Napoleon Hill's Andrew Carnegie and the real Andrew Carnegie are two completely different people. One is some self-help person with a bunch of puff and fluff. The other is like a practical businessman who talks like a businessman, who understands competition, who understands market forces, who understands that not everything is just about your mindset, right? So what do we make of the Napoleon Hill story now that it's all out there? Well, it's interesting. Just like I think Napoleon Hill was sort of the original guru, I think we can learn a lot of lessons from both his successes and his failures, because obviously his fraud was very successful because millions of people have bought his books, millions of people have bought into this idea that he was, some oracle of the rich and famous. But the truth is, when he died, most people suspect penniless. He had been bankrupt many times. He had been run out of towns. He said there was an attempted assassination on his life. Fraud, accusations of fraud. It all just follows the familiar path of our confidence men. They achieve a little bit of success because scams do. But ultimately, they're constantly undone by their own design. He was constantly spending too much money, spending more money than he could afford, chased by creditors. This man is not someone you want to look up to, even though on the outside, all that glitters is gold. The truth is that something was rotting at the heart of Napoleon Hill's story. You know, I know that this might seem weird for me to say at the very end of all this, but I do think there's good things in Think and Grow Rich, about positive thinking, about goal setting. But the problem is that Think and Grow Rich takes it too far. It makes it into some gospel of success, that positive thinking is all that you need, that you don't need luck, that you don't need talent, that any person can just wish themselves into $1 trillion, and if you don't have that $1 trillion yet, well, you just must not be thinking about it enough. You must not be desiring it enough. That is completely ridiculous and leads to a toxic system of punishment for people who haven't achieved their dreams, as my friend James Johnny would later say in his series on the law of attraction. So I'm not saying throw out your book of Think and Grow Rich. If you want to keep it, if it helps you, hey, I think that's fine. But you should know who Napoleon Hill was. You should know what the end of his life looked like, and you should know who he really talked to and who he really didn't. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.